Thanks everyone for listening in today. As Patrick mentioned, I'm Mike Boland and I'm the lead mobile analyst at BIA Kelsey. And we hope to make this webcast worth your while with some commentary around the mobile opportunity for local media companies that sell various bundles of advertising media. So the question today really is, how is mobile joining that suite of products in monetizable ways? And this really stems from a report that was just published jointly by BIA Kelsey and dotMobi. Which really interviewed a series of top-tier global directory publishers to find out how they're positioning their mobile products. And that includes both building products but also selling them to SMBs. You know, what have been the learnings, the best practices, and even the worst practices that we can learn from. So we're going to focus a great deal today on the findings from that paper throughout the webcast, and we'll provide the download link actually towards the end so you can actually read it yourself. So onto the content. To give you an idea of what to expect in the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to kick off the discussion with a look at the current state of the marketplace and really where BIA Kelsey sees opportunities in mobile advertising. And then I plan to kick it over to Chris Campbell, who's Business Development Director at dotMobi, and he'll drill down into some of the actual findings from the paper. That's really the centerpiece of this webcast. And there are lots of interesting findings there, and he'll go through them. And then we'll drill down even further with Chris Fulmar, who's Director of Mobile Development at Supermedia. And that's going to be great because he'll dive into what Supermedia, as a local publisher, is specifically doing to build and sell mobile local marketing products. So we can go on to the next slide here, Patrick. A good starting point for all this is our mobile forecast. And what you see here is, you know, the top-level forecast data. This shows revenue opportunity for mobile advertising and includes ad formats such as search and display and SMS and video. But to sum it up, we see the U.S. mobile ad revenue opportunity growing from about 1.6 billion last year up to about 9.9 billion in 2016. And I know there are many overseas listeners on this webcast, so this U.S. figure probably isn't as directly applicable to you, but this is certainly directionally relevant in that there are a lot of parallel growth rates in your markets and really similar trends driving this growth, and the way that these figures break down. So one of the many ways we break down this total is the share of ad dollars that are devoted to location-targeted mobile ads, which brings me to my next slide. So what we're looking at next is the breakdown of that same total seen in the previous slide, but segments the ad spend between locally targeted ads and non-locally targeted ads. And what we mean by that are that mobile ads that have a geo-targeted component and are placed with the intention of being shown to users in specific locations. So there are other kind of designations there, such as localized ad copy or calls to action, but the main kind of designation here is that there's a geo-targeted component to the campaign, and that can really include both national advertisers and local SMBs, which is a key point. But really what sticks out beyond the kind of definitions is that the location-targeted portion of this ad spend is going from about 45% last year to almost 60% by 2016. And there are a few key reasons for this that I think represent some important trends and drivers, which we'll walk through one by one. So we can go to the next slide. The first reason here is simply mobile usage. You know, usage is often a driver with ad-based media, you know, coming before the trailing habits of advertisers. And with mobile, the leading indicator we're seeing is that local user intent tends to index a bit higher. So about 20% of overall searches are mobile, and Google reports this. But more importantly, half of those searches, the mobile searches, have local intent. And that's almost 2 billion searches per month. But I think even more notable than that kind of 50% share is the fact that about a year ago that was 40%, and a year before that it was about a third. So it's not only large, but it has some momentum behind it, and it's really anything but static. So that leads right into reason number two, which is that advertiser evolution will really start to come around to that reality and build location-oriented campaigns. And that'll happen in a couple of different ways. The first is that national advertisers are really beginning to build campaigns that are more effectively localized. We're already seeing this. We talk to a lot of mobile ad networks. Millennial Media, top mobile ad network, tells me that location is actually the fastest growing form of ad targeting on their mobile ad network. But the second way that I want to focus on more, which is more kind of the focus of this webcast, which is mobile advertising will move down market to become more accessible and adopted by the long-tail SMB segment. And that hasn't really happened yet to a large degree, but we believe it will really start to come together through, a couple of different ways. One is the democratization of ads and self-serve tools, kind of just like we saw evolve on the desktop over the last decade. But more so than self-serve, SMBs will really start to adopt mobile advertising, we believe, as a result of its packaging by local media companies who deliver it right to them and hold their hands through the process, which is, what our ongoing research really shows is what kind of SMBs need. And both Chris's subsequently will touch on this point and show kind of different ways that's coming together. We can go to the next slide. And this is the third and final reason for that kind of local share shift in mobile advertising. And it really has a lot to do with higher performing local ads that will lead to higher demand and higher premiums. So we're seeing this not only in standard metrics like higher click-through rates, but what's happening after the click is very important in mobile, or what we call secondary actions. So we're seeing high rates of things like phone calls or directions being launched by mobile users, as shown by some of these data from XAD and Millennial Media. And again, I'll reiterate a point Patrick made earlier, which is that the webinar replay and a lot of these slides will be available to you after. So a lot of these data points, which I'm going through rather quickly, you'll have access to subsequently. So anyway, these are important trackable actions because they go further down the funnel and indicate a more tangible ROI for advertisers. And that's especially true for local merchant categories that really value calls. Think service-based businesses or anyone that sets appointments over the phone, or those that value foot traffic, restaurants and retail, and lots of other kind of actions that mobile can drive. So the main takeaway here is really not only that you can achieve these higher levels of performance, but really the calls to action, when placed prominently to kind of capture that user intent, is usually a winning strategy. And we're seeing lots of best practices out there for mobile content that include actionable components within the ad or within the click-through, like click to call or directions or store locators or things along those lines. So if we go to the next slide, here's kind of one example of what I'm talking about. This concept doesn't just apply to mobile ads. One thing we're going to focus on today is establishing a mobile presence for small businesses and even large businesses. There's often lots of attention paid to mobile advertising effectiveness, but often in all of that, the first step is ignored, which is to have a decent website where all those links are actually bringing users and where lots of these kind of valued user actions are happening. So these sites, have to be created for mobile's unique kind of aspects like screen size and touch friendliness. You see here a kind of before and after of the benefits, kind of just graphically speaking, with mobile optimization. But it's not just about kind of layout and responsive design, but also you'll see here there's a certain set of calls to action you want to have prominent in mobile websites, and it varies across business categories and verticals depending on the kind of dynamics of how leads are typically captured. So if you look at the example on the right of this slide, you'll see a good example of an optimized mobile site for a restaurant, which captures high user intent with things like calls, directions, and even kind of booking a table. And the left side is conversely the non-optimized version, which requires lots of pinching and zooming and clicking on tiny tabs to get things like the phone number that's likely buried at least one layer deep because that was kind of appropriate for the desktop layout. So anyway, we're going to see some more examples of this from Chris Folmar in just a bit, but I think that's an important point, that it's really just the kind of design, but then also the types of actionable kind of content you have on the site needs to really vary and be specialized for the mobile use case. Next slide. Back to the kind of, or to back up, excuse me, the importance of doing this. Not only does it kind of logically pan out, I think there's probably a lot of agreement in some of the things I just said, but to put some numbers behind it, Google has published some data that really illustrates the real advantages of mobile optimized sites. So they've reported that 52% of users are more likely to purchase from retailers that have mobile optimized sites, and 85% of users increase their levels of engagement with sites that are optimized. But the scarier notion, I think this is even more effective, is the kind of the stick method as opposed to the carrot. Google has reported that 40% of mobile site visitors are likely to leave and go to a competitor site if met with an under-optimized experience, sort of like we saw on the left-hand side of the previous slide. And then lastly, Google has announced that its mobile search rankings will actually favor mobile-optimized sites. So in terms of SEO, you'll actually be penalized and lose potential traffic if you don't do these things. And in terms of kind of specific design best practices, in addition to the example on the previous slide, we're going to get into that discussion in our more open Q&A segment in a little bit. Next slide, and we're kind of winding down here on some of these intro points. Speaking of search, all of this kind of becomes more urgent if you look at the amount of mobile search and web activity that's increasingly driving users to SMB mobile websites. As mentioned, 20% of searches are mobile, and half of those have local intent. So further in support of these kind of high traffic levels is the growth of search, mobile search, that BIA Kelsey projects. So you can see that on this slide, and this is similar to the first slide I showed, but this breakdown deals with different ad formats. So the growth in search really correlates to high mobile web traffic, which we see growing rapidly over the next few years. And that's really a function of some of the market factors, like the economic advantages for developers to opt to build mobile websites over native apps. And that's especially true in the SMB world, which we're going to get into in a bit. Now, apps certainly aren't going away, but we're going to see a rapid acceleration, I believe, in the development of the mobile web with tools such as HTML5 to build kind of app-like functionality, but for cheaper. So anyway, that in turn is going to create a more functional and user-friendly mobile web, which will attract more users who have mostly so far opted for the kind of more functional or slick interfaces of native app experiences. But the point in all of this is really that we're going to see a renaissance in the quality of the mobile web, which will attract even more browser-based searches and web traffic, which is why we see this search dollar share going up. But if we go to the next slide, here's kind of the kicker to all this. Despite all the growing levels of traffic and mobile web search based on all these factors, much of which is landing on locally oriented commercial sites, only 2% of SMB websites are optimized. And these are data from BIA Kelsey's research partner, vSplash. So really that gap, I think, is an important point and represents a massive opportunity to build and optimize and host mobile websites for SMBs. And whoever can really do that at scale and with the one-stop shop simplicity that SMBs need, which I mentioned earlier, I think will be well positioned. And we're seeing some local media publishers like Supermedia do just that. And we'll hear from Chris Folmar in just a bit. There's also mobile pure plays that bring lots of capabilities to publishers, such as what dotMobi and many others in the market are doing. So that's really kind of the cue to our white paper, and that's a good place to hand it over to Chris Campbell. Chris is dotMobi's Director of Business Development, and as I mentioned, he's going to drill down a little bit deeper into our joint white paper findings. So Chris, if you want to just take it from there and actually introduce yourself and your role, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Yeah, I'm Chris Campbell. I'm the Director of Business Development for the dotMobi company. Been lucky enough to work with the folks at dotMobi for the past 6 years. I work with some of the top directory publishers, hosting companies, and domain registrars, design companies to help bring mobile web solutions to their customers. Right now, so we're 100% focused on the growth of the mobile web, and dotMobi has been since their inception in 2005. We're focused on helping businesses and individuals reach the billions of mobile phone users out there. Tons of opportunity on the mobile web. We do that through the dotMobi top-level domain, and today what I'm specifically talking about and how we work with Supermedia and BIA Kelsey with our GoMobi mobile website publishing tool. If you want, we could move over to the first slide and get started. I want to dig a little deeper into the study we did together and talk about some of the specific findings from the research. Also discuss a little bit what strategic value the directory publishers see in mobile today and how they're actually leveraging that. So you can see on the slide here, we found that 73% of respondents indicate that mobile will be a major importance in their business. It's pretty obvious we all carry these phones in our pockets. I think most of us search on them. So I think it's clear that, especially for directory publishers, it's going to be an important piece moving forward as mobile search grows. Each of the publishers indicated having some type of mobile-specific offering. This was very interesting because it doesn't necessarily mean they're offering mobile websites to their customers, but these directory services are receiving mobile traffic themselves. So most everybody has some sort of mobile version of their directory listings, usually through a native app, sometimes through a mobile website of their own. They've been required to do that based on user demand and really just the increased device usage globally. There's a real opportunity here. Mobile search is growing, and it requires, and especially on the mobile directories. So that's bringing mobile traffic to the small businesses and who really need a mobile destination. Without that, you get increased bounce rates, lost traffic, and really lost opportunity for the SMBs. If you want, you could move on to the next slide. We also talked to the respondents about their perspective on the competitive environment, and I think it really came as no surprise to hear that most certainly see Google as the #1 threat out there. A couple reasons for that is I think a big one is the Android platform. Any of us that use a smartphone that uses the Android platform, you notice if you do a search, it's pretty much going through Google. And then there's just the power of their brand. So a lot of people direct navigating to Google to initiate those searches. Location-based check-in services also came up as a main concern, a competitor to the directory publisher business, Yelp, Foursquare, and niche apps where you go in and search for restaurants and dry cleaners, local businesses, the kind that the directory services, it's really their sweet spot with their local advertisers. So those are the main competitors. Found it really interesting that not many viewed Facebook as a significant competitive threat. I think this may be due to just user behavior. I don't think a lot of people go to Facebook to do an initial search for a business. But with the small businesses understanding of the need for social media presence and Facebook mobilizing 100% of their content now, it's just something to be aware of and keep our eye on in the future and see how the users, how that develops and how they use it. Another important bit of information we were trying to get is how are these directory services planning to invest in mobile? And nearly all, or most, sorry, 55% there, will increase investment in mobile. One of the key reasons is they see it as a way to reduce churn. If you have a live, active mobile website with content on it, you provide that to your advertising customers, it's definitely create an added level of stickiness for your advertising customers and reduces churn all around. Most didn't see a native app as realistic for their customers, and again, we're talking about small businesses here, and they widely understand that advanced functionality is really important. I think the respondents understand that simply reformatting content for the mobile device isn't enough anymore. The phones have much more capability that need to be taken advantage of. Small businesses want to engage with their customers with that functionality, with QR codes or m-commerce or mobile couponing systems, advanced design tools, things like that. So, there's really an opportunity there to take advantage of if you can interact with your customers in that way. And an important point here, I think, down on the bottom of the screen is that mobile's an action platform, not a research platform. So, rather than just reformatting content, they understand the need to take advantage of the capabilities of that phone so that people can instantly get in contact with you, whether it's clicking a button and talking to you, whether it's walking into your small business with a coupon they just pulled up, as they were walking out front. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and it sounds like the directory publishers understand that, are planning to increase investment in mobile in the coming years. You can move on to the next slide if you want. Actually just going back quickly, another thing that the directory publishers are dealing with when figuring out how to invest in mobile is a challenge of whether to invest in their own native app or their own mobile directory, or to provide mobile sites to customers, which leads us here to the build versus buy discussion. So we found that 90% of the directory services that we talk to are white labeling their mobile website offerings, which I can tell you from personal experience, I think it makes a lot of sense because the mobile web, I think, is still in its infancy, and the technology is constantly changing. So it's really an ongoing, endless, major development project to keep up with the the latest technologies, and to have the ability to respond to the fast-moving marketplace. A lot of these functionalities, I spoke to some of these earlier, QR codes, mobile commerce, are important, and the small business needs to compete with the other businesses out there. They need to keep pace with the technologies. So directory services who provide a white-labeled mobile solution are able to keep pace and able to focus on what they do, which is provide advertising services to the small business, and through a white-labeled partnership with a company like ourselves, they're not spending their time focused on mobile web development, but they're able to provide top-tier services to their customers. And moving to the next slide, we also talked about the impact on the current product portfolio within the directory services. Most of the directory services do bundle some mobile service with their customers. Mostly they bundle a mobile directory listing. There's a real revenue opportunity, though, for the directory services to provide a mobile site creation as well. We know there's increased mobile searches. There's increased mobile search to the directory's mobile listing, and that just means increased mobile visits for the small business. Also, when we polled them, the directories understand that some of the features they see as most important are maps, click-to-call, and then maybe not too different from the normal internet of video and social links and scheduling features. But it's very important to realize that these advertisers, these small local businesses, if you can pull up someone's out on the road looking for them and can pull up their site, click one button, and they're talking to them on the phone, or they have a map with GPS giving turn-by-turn directions to their business, there's a great advantage there. And I think the directories specifically have a great opportunity to communicate that to their existing advertisers. So mobile web and opportunity. I think there's a clear opportunity here just based on the increased traffic, and we all use them. We all see that. Mobile search will exceed the desktop search. It already has in some countries. We saw this year in India that's happened, and then here in North America and Europe we're seeing it grow very quickly. So we think in the next few years it will exceed desktop search. Mobile channel works exceedingly well for many verticals. This is super important for the directory services because these are the verticals that the directories work in, the small businesses, the restaurants, the plumbers, just all those small businesses. And with the growth of local mobile search specifically, there's a huge opportunity there. The directory services have the ability to bundle a mobile website or mobile services with existing advertising, which is a way to increase their revenue. And also through the ability to white label the service through a third party best of breed technology provider, it's really not that hard technically to provide the service. So it presents a unique sales distribution opportunity for the directory service. Mobile traffic and search is up. On the earlier slide, Michael was talking about 98% of small business sites are not mobile optimized. There's a huge gap there, which I think represents a great opportunity for directory publishers to fill that gap. And I think maybe that's my last slide, although I don't know if any questions have come in, Michael, that you want to pass on or not.
Sure. Before we transition over into Chris Fulmar, a comment and a question. I thought it was interesting that Facebook is not seen as more of a competitive threat right now from the perspective of directory publishers, as you pointed out, because BIA Kelsey survey data, our local Commerce Monitor survey of small businesses, indicates that about 52% of small businesses are now using Facebook as a local marketing channel, and that number, not too long ago, probably 2 years ago, was 0. So I mean, certainly some quick growth there that I think will become more prominent as a recognizable competitive threat. But the question for you before we go on to Chris, you mentioned kind of the mobile within the product portfolio for directory publishers. That's an interesting point to me. Unpack that a little bit more. Is it because the bundle is now more appealing, not only for advertiser retention, but even attracting new advertisers with the kind of shiny new thing that can be, an entree into higher tech, upsells in the bundle. Are you seeing that happen at all?
We are, and there's actually, I find there's a number of reasons for that. Obviously, a mobile landing page complements the current offering, and
Yep.
really, when it comes to dealing with the small business market and the mobile web, step one is still education. There's still, I think, a perception in the SMB market that a mobile website is, a major expense and very technically challenging for them to accomplish. Now, directory services often have an existing relationship with these small businesses and are already selling them advertising services. So it's a really great opportunity to bundle that with them. And because directories have, a lot of them have, feet on the street. They have sales teams with existing relationships with these advertisers. It gives them an opportunity to have that conversation and do that education piece face to face. And often it's so simple these days with tools, like dotMobi to build out a mobile website, especially when you have information on that small business, even just from the directory listing, if you know where their website is and how to contact them. We have directories we work with that are able to show up at a small business, and they've already in 5 minutes or 10 minutes created a mobile website specific to that business. And it gives the opportunity to show them how it works, the ease of use, and really to just get past that education piece of explaining that mobile search is increasing, and really if you don't have a mobile destination, it could be a real issue. Like you talked about, Michael, at the beginning of the presentation. If someone visits a site that's not optimized for mobile web, it doesn't give a very professional look to that customer, and they most likely won't visit again. So.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I think that's great takeaways in terms of learnings for the sales force in not only using mobile as kind of a show and tell, as you mentioned, the site can be onboarded in a matter of minutes with content, but also the kind of, to put it rather bluntly, the scare tactics of, if you are not mobile, here are the consequences for your business. So I think that's great messaging for anyone on the call or on the webinar who's in the, the business of selling business leads and mobile marketing. So what we'll do now, we'll transfer over to Chris Folmar, who I'm sure has a lot to kind of add to this existing discussion. And I spent a lot of time talking to Chris in the past, and he's always had very insightful things to say. You may have even seen him on our conference stage a few times over the past couple of years. So Chris, I'll kick it over to you if you want to introduce yourself, and then go right into your slides.
Thank you very much, Chris and Michael. I appreciate the setup. I've been with Supermedia since 2010, and I work with a very small but really talented team. And we're focused completely on mobile solutions for B2C and B2B initiatives throughout Supermedia. Our job is to really try to innovate and develop new platforms and product concepts that get rolled out across the market. So what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about how our platforms and programs work, how we've worked with partners like dotMobi to integrate white label solutions into our solution bundles, what some of the other products are that kind of swap through different classic advertising solutions and how we're taking them mobile. And then I'll finally talk a little bit how we're doing some specific things on our own mobile platforms. And to kick it off, I'd like to start off by saying I think mobile is a diagonal business unit. I mean, we work vertically and we work horizontally across organizations. So really, as we'll go through our strategic overview here, the first thing is to understand that we create a platform to drive user engagement that drives our mobile traffic up. And we do this by having things on the mobile web and through mobile applications. As the consumers come and interact with our mobile properties, now we have products that try to monetize that for our clients. And these have different solutions. We've got SEM for mobile, we have SMS trials, we have mobile website clients, and we even have sponsorship opportunities. This really forms a virtuous circle. And that right there drives value not only for our clients, but for us as well. And it allows us to really be that kind of end-to-end marketing partner that we want to be for the SMB. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about some of those solution bundles themselves. So mobile advertising is now. It's not coming, it's now. We've got it integrated, like I said, into major bundles. And we'll talk now very specific about how mobile interacts with SEM. On social, if you're not doing social, you're really missing a lot of it. And understand that I think over 50%, most social interactions are now coming from mobile websites and applications. Facebook in particular is Twitter, highly driven by mobile usage. So being discoverable, having a presence there, these are exceptionally important. Listing claiming, our website. We actually, even as a subproduct for our web, we offer a mobile website right now at $29.95 a month, which is incredibly easy to set up. And I'll show you an example of that here in just a second. But first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about SEM. I think this is a really important topic. Right now, as you mentioned earlier, Google has, say, 20% of all searches are coming from mobile. That can spike as high as 30% or higher for categories like restaurants. And they have tools right now that really exist that you can target smartphone users right down to the device type, tablet or smartphone. And this holiday season, 2 out of every 3 shoppers are using a smartphone for price comparison. Looking for coupons and from reviews. So one of the things that we do is we opt in our clients for AdWords for mobile at every SEM campaign that they do. We also will create specific campaigns just for targeting mobile if it's a high purchase frequency areas like location or entertainment. So we've already worked on extending that vertically. The next slide I'll talk a little bit about is some of the things we're doing with SMS. Here's an important fact, that it takes 90 minutes for the average person to respond to an email, but it only takes about 90 seconds for the average person to respond to a text message. And that's data from CTIA. Almost every phone in the United States receives an SMS. And we take these things very personally. Because it's a personal, it's a trusted device. Because of that, if we can get consumers to opt into an SMS program, your things like offers and deals have a 20% open rate. And that's because there's an opt-in and double opt-in requirements. Permission marketing is a really incredible powerful offer for CRM. That's why we're trying it with offers, appointment reminders, things like loyalty programs. A couple data points on SMS I want everyone to understand is that right now there are more SMS sent than calls made from mobile phones, whether it's a feature phone or smartphone. And they have nearly 100% open rates if you've opted in to receive a message. That means that if it goes out, you know it's going to be seen. That's what really makes it so fantastic for CRM. There is a danger, though, and that's of sending too many messages per month. I believe very strongly that about 3 to 4 messages per month max is all you want to do. We've all received notifications on our smartphones, or we've gotten text message that we didn't ask for. And if it starts to get annoying, or if you receive something you didn't ask for, there's a really emotional response to that. Because this is a device that a lot of us bank on. We have pictures of our kids. We keep a lot of personal data on here. So when you're going into SMS, you really want to be careful about not only coaching people how to create a compelling offer in 140 characters or less, but also to think about the frequency in which you want to set up a campaign. Because again, it's such a powerful hook that you want to use it very discreetly. I can summarize it very succinctly saying, if you think of email marketing as like a shotgun blast, SMS is like a sniper rifle, and you want to treat it with a lot of respect and care. So moving on to our next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about mobile websites. We've all talked on them for a little bit, but I actually want to take a real-world example here. This is an actual screenshot of a Supermedia client, and this is how the device looked when I first pulled it up. And the first thing I say is, if you make the person work to actually call you, it's a fail. If I have to try to figure out where you're at or do any type of pinching or zooming around, it's a fail. To go back to Michael's slide earlier, you mentioned 40% of the users will go to a competitor site if they can't find what you want. And that's because what Chris Campbell pointed out about mobile being an action medium is absolutely right. People are coming in to do business. So what we've done here is we've got an optimized mobile site here. By optimized, I mean not only the content's there, but we've taken the actions that people most likely want to take, the information that people are most likely looking for in that business, and made it easy to find. So we put the call, phone number up front, a little bit about us, coupons, a little bit of product information, links to their social media and videos. Again, you want to make it really easy for them to navigate. You also want to think about how fast the site loads. So you want to make sure, however you get the site structured, whomever you work with, that you have a program and a partner in that platform that loads exceptionally quickly on a variety of devices. Not everyone has LTE out there. You've got to remember that. But one thing I really want to challenge is you can build the best site, you can make it look great on a mobile phone, and you can have it ring, and whomever picks up that phone, remember, if they give bad information, it's all for nothing. So you really want to think about when someone's calling you from a mobile phone, they're ready to do business. This is not a research platform. It's an action platform. So when you're doing a mobile site, you can get everything right. You want to make sure you get that last yard right, too, is identify that as a call coming from a mobile device. Understand that the person who is calling from that device is going to have a high sense of urgency to get business done. And make sure that that bypasses any typical phone trees or might go to somebody who doesn't give the best customer service. We really want to make sure whoever answers that call from our mobile website is going to just absolutely make the consumer thrilled that they called that business. And that's going to keep them there, and that's going to have them come back and tell their friends about it. So going to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit how we have been practicing with those very same things on our own platform. Because what is important for SMBs is also important for us as a directory. So what you're seeing here is screens from our mobile website as well as from our Superpages mobile application. And over the last year, we've done a trial with national clients, and we've given them exclusive paid placement at the top of a category and geography-specific search. What's different about this, as opposed to display, is it's not pay-per-click. This is actually pay-for-performance. We actually work with them in such a way that they only pay us when the calls last for a certain amount of time. What we found by working with something that's not very invasive into the consumer experience, and they have a good call to action, we're seeing a much higher click-through rate than the category average, and the AVO to us and to the clients has been really high. In fact, this program has been so successful for us that we started with 3 clients. We've expanded now to over 100 just through the beta trial, and in early 2013, we're actually rolling this out nationally for thousands of clients across the country that we sold directly by our local media sales representatives. So we're really excited because we've had the chance to learn and to perfect and what the messaging needs to be, the elements that make a good mobile ad, and the elements that make a great mobile experience when someone pushes the call now button. I want to leave that thought here is that our job isn't getting someone to push the green button. Our job is to actually have them push the red button to hang up the call after the time allotment for the call to effect. How do we work with the client from beginning to truly end so that there's a great mobile experience for the consumers? So my capstone slide here is going to be 5 things that a local business can do to be mobile enabled. These are things I just personally recommend. These are not all products that Supermedia sells, and in fact, some of them we don't. So I don't want you to think that I'm just here trying to hawk our own stuff. But as you can see, it's very simple. Have a mobile-friendly site. When we're doing SEM, make sure that you're enabling mobile-specific SEM, and particularly if you have, for high-frequency areas, high-repeat purchase, target mobile devices specifically. When you're on social media, think about the fact that people are checking from their mobile phones, so have new stuff for them to see as often as possible. This is also just really good in terms of SEO with the Google's Penguin and Panda updates. If you send out emails, make sure they look good on mobile phones. 76% of people who have smartphones check their email on their mobile phone. You don't want to go through the problem of having a great email solution platform and then have it fail by not looking really good on mobile phones. They'll just do a quick swipe, delete it, and move on to the next one. And finally, if you're not using text messaging programs, try them. I personally believe this is one of the most powerful hooks that we can use to get repeat customers and drive loyalty. But again, it's a very powerful tool, so you have to use it wisely. For more information on this, you can always check out my blog. I've got a lot of articles I've written on mobile web versus mobile apps, and particularly mobile tactics for SMBs.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Good stuff. So we're going to kind of move into some listener questions and then also just kind of an open discussion. But first, to zero in on one of the things you presented, Patrick, if you could go back to slide 25, if you're able to reverse, 4 or 5 slides. I want to kind of spend a little bit more time talking about some of the design elements. I think we're talking about a lot of stuff on this call that's really the why of mobile and mobile website optimization. You got into some of the how, which I want there to be a lot of good kind of tactical takeaways here for the people listening. So what are the other kind of design elements here that you would point out? One thing that jumps out to me is the kind of the grid format that's very intuitive. Users are accustomed to this through, it kind of looking similar to an app home screen? What are the other kind of best practices that you would espouse in terms of design? And Chris Campbell, I'd like you to jump in as well on that question.
Sure.
But Chris Volmar, please, first, if there's any other things you want to point out here about just kind of design best practices. Are you still there, Chris?
I just dialed back in. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. let me repeat my question. What we're looking at here is we went back to your slide that shows the kind of best practices in design, layout and design, and calls to action, and that really strikes me as an important point to give some tactical takeaways to the listeners of this call. So, what other things would you kind of espouse as best practices in design? One thing that jumps out here is the kind of grid formatting that's very kind of logical. What else would you point to?
Well, I mean, there are different schools of thought on that. I mean, I think whether you're doing a vertical stack with your options or a grid layout with this is kind of app-like, what you're doing is you're making it very easy for people to kind of look at the icons and understand what action is available at their fingertips. So more importantly than whatever the particular framework is, I think it is going in understanding the number one thing I want a consumer to do on my mobile website is X. For example, the slide that Chris showed earlier with or maybe you showed it earlier with the restaurants before and after, and the top option was book a table. See, I think that's fantastic because some businesses would like to drive reservations. That's going to be the number one point of engagement. Others, maybe, I really want someone to call me, and that's going to be their number one engagement. I think you really have to identify what those engagement points are first, and then good design is going to follow from that.
That's a great point, and I think one telling point here is that on the screen we're looking at, the very first option is call. So this is the type of business as home services. They're probably booking business over the phone, so it's logical to have call us there. And I think that the click-to-call kind of paradigm, we just put out a paper about this recently, is really going to catch on. And I think it's such an obvious and silly thing to say, but not really realized out there that the device we're talking about is, after all, a phone and can drive phone calls. I'm often asked what my favorite app is, and my answer is usually the phone. Chris Campbell, anything to add there on design? Or it looks like you want to say something too, Chris Fulmer. Either of you guys, please jump in.
Yeah, I could. I think Chris Fulmer really, captured the main points there. But I think one important thing is that these are visitors who are usually, it's an actionable device that they have something in mind they want to do. It's not somewhere they're going to go research. So, like you said, for this company, call us is most likely the most important thing. They probably take their business over the phone. For a restaurant, it may be a link to set a reservation online or to pull up a map and find us. So it just, when you need to make it easy and quick to find, or they will move on. Also, I think it's important if you note at the bottom of this, the bottom right icon there is a link to the full site. So that's when someone's looking for specific information they've seen before, maybe on the full site. So it's always nice to have a link to that. And most of the services, what we'll do is we'll optimize that content so it will fit on the screen. But just the idea that it's an actionable device, it's a different context. A mobile visitor has a different context than someone sitting at home at their desk all the time in the world looking at a full website. So, we try to make these mobile sites so that with that in mind.
Now, the kind of the do-it-for-me, DIFM paradigm that is, strategic with small businesses, are you guys finding ways to kind of templatize? I'm not sure if that word exists, but essentially create templates that are specific to the best practices in certain verticals in order to kind of achieve that educational point that you mentioned, Chris. For example, a business that is coming to your home likely will not want to place prominently the call to action to get directions to their location. Things like that. I mean, are you finding there are best practices within certain verticals that can be replicated in templatized ways in the way that you're kind of serving this in a kind of high scale and sometimes automated fashion to a long tail of SMBs?
Yeah, certainly. And more as HTML5 templates become available, I think for us, we're constantly adding new ways to design these pages, new templates, because there's some that are straightforward, like a restaurant. I think booking a table, getting directions is very obvious. a home services company. Getting on the phone with them is obvious, but there's so many examples where we have no idea what's important to them. So
Right.
It's important to give a number of templates that are for those main categories, especially those main categories that the directory services deal with all the time. But to also make it flexible enough where the site owner can arrange the site and organize the site in a way that makes the most sense for them, because there's really no one template that's going to work for everybody.
Now, we can go back to where we were in the deck at that kind of endpoint. There are actually a few great audience questions coming in. Here's one that goes back to the stat that you mentioned, Chris Campbell, about the percentage of publishers that are doing things in-house, and it was the vast majority. I believe it was. I'm sorry, the ones that are outsourcing and white labeling, and it was about 90%. There's a question here asking what kind of infrastructure does a directory publisher need to have in place for selling mobile websites, and I would add the creation and technical backend in addition to the Salesforce issues, and either of you can jump in on that. Chris Fulmar, I'm actually curious what you guys are doing and how you're structured internally in terms of development in-house versus outsourcing.
Okay, I think it's a great question. I'm happy to take on this. So when I actually came to Supermedia a couple years ago, the first question I was asked was, how do we support client mobile websites? Do we do it in-house or do we partner? And I wasn't very hard for me to see the advantage of working with somebody who can handle these sites like dotMobi. But the challenge comes to be then about how do you fulfill, especially when you're dealing with an integrated solution offer where you've got websites on one side, you've got mobile websites on the other, and then you have other advertising units that are all kind of complementary, whether it's social media, the SEM. So really what you have to do to make sure you can deliver that is first off, you've got to understand the business case. You got to understand what's a fair market price, what's the value you're going to drive for this, so that people feel like they're getting it out of their money. Oftentimes with things like mobile, it's so new and shiny, people will run to it and say, I've got to do it, and they haven't really articulated a good goal for it as a business tool, and that gives them a sense of what the ROI is going to be. So I think that's one of the first things everyone's got to do, and especially if you're going to be a directory publisher fulfilling this for clients, is understand how to help the client see the value from day one. Now, on the back end, you got to have a sales force. You got to have that is informed, that is trained, and has access to the right tools so that they can quickly enter an order and have a site set up. We work with a process that allows us to stand up a site virtually instantly once the order has gone through, and this allows for some such complexity as getting the user agent redirect in place so that they don't have to promote multiple domains. And it also, you have to have the ability for them to go in and manage new content, because mobile websites not fire and forget. An SMB shouldn't just say, hey, I've gotten somebody to launch me a mobile website, man, I'm awesome, and I'm not going to ever look at it again. Content needs to be fresh. Recency is now relevancy in terms of the way Google is indexing sites. And as you mentioned, Google is preferencing mobile optimized sites for mobile originated searches. So there is a fair amount of back-end logistics and support that need to be thought of in terms of how you go to market with one of these solutions. However, it's not brain surgery. It certainly can be done. If you can launch websites, if you can sell websites, you can certainly fulfill these as well. You just need to make sure that the process is smooth so that consumers have a really good experience, and then they understand how to help manage this product. Because again, this is something that consumers and account managers have to come back to and make sure it gets updated on a regular basis.
Yeah, on the bright side, mobile seems to be the type of thing that will resonate with a great deal of small business advertisers when you compare it to some of the things that have been sold to them over the last decade, such as search engine marketing. The concept of buying clicks might be rather abstract to your average plumber, whereas the types of actions that mobile drives, such as calls and foot traffic, are, I think, a more tangible ROI. So I think that is the advantage that directory publishers have in integrating it into these bundles. So Chris Campbell, anything to add?
A couple things. I would just say that Chris Fulmer brought up that they looked at this and decided to go with a partner. And one thing is, unless this isn't a system you can build and go live with and leave it and go move on to other things. With the developing technologies and the devices, the website's capability to take advantage of that is constantly developing. So, it's a lot to get into, which I think makes a case to go with probably with a third party. But everybody can make their own decision on that.
Chris Fulmar, it looks like you wanted to say something as well. And last word before we kind of jump into some of the directional matter around the paper and other great stuff like that. Anything to kind of end off on?
Yeah. Just I want to remind people the reason I think that you mentioned, like, the SMD owners and stuff, they might really get more excited about mobile than SEM or paying for clicks. According to Nielsen, Pew, all these other studies that are coming out right now, 50% of people who have phones own smartphones.
Yeah.
This is a really tangible experience that they can see and they understand. They use them, their kids use them, their family members use them. It's growing at every end of the demographic spectrum. Heck, I just bought my mom an iPhone 5 and an iPad. It's in everyone's life, whether they're an active user or not. They're impacted by the presence of smartphones, and they're starting to really understand and grasp just how this is starting to affect discoverability. Mm-hmm. The second thing I want to say is there is nothing more powerful than when someone comes in and puts a phone in your face saying, "I found you here." Whether that's an offer or it's a map, it really bridges the digital search with a physical point of presence. Whether that point of presence is in my house where someone's cleaning my carpets, or it's a tow truck that came to rescue me on the side of the road. That phone in the face is a very tangible reminder of this digital opportunity.
No, that's great, Chris. And I would add to your point that, BIA Kelsey small business survey data has consistently shown over many years and over 16 waves of research that a leading indicator for SMB advertising purchase behavior is the type of advertising that they themselves use as a consumer. So to your point, smartphone penetration, all these different media being kind of in the hands of the small business, I think makes it something that is more saleable and something that they get, so to speak. So what we're going to do now is talk a little bit about this paper that we alluded to and that Chris Campbell showed some great data for. It's a free white paper that's available for you to download. There's a lot more there. You can download it at the link you see here on this screen, biakelsey.com/mobilereport.asp. And, just a little bit on the kind of methodology here, myself and some of my colleagues and some of the dotMobi folks essentially spent a lot of time talking with a large group of worldwide top-tier directory publishers to really poll them on what they were doing, their kind of temperature on mobile, and how they were integrating it. Today we got one kind of great example in what Supermedia is doing. There are many others in this report. We recommend that you download it. And really what we want this to be is a conversation starter, to really engage with you about how you fit in, in either BIA Kelsey advisory service or conference participation, or in partnering with the companies on this call in ways that you might see synergy, such as dotMobi for website creation and all the different ways that Supermedia is positioned as kind of a media company selling services into the SMB marketplace. So we hope you'll reach out to us. Chris Campbell, anything more to say from the dotMobi perspective on the paper itself or your goals?
Really, I would say just take a look. Well, I know sometimes large technical documents can be intimidating, but it's a great paper. It's very to the point, and I think it it makes a lot of sense for the directory services. It's very focused on that piece of the market, and really easy to go through and understand, and makes some good cases for a lot of different ways to approach it. So I would just say definitely take a look.
Okay, and then the next slide, I believe this is our final slide, just to point out a few different kind of opportunities to engage with us going forward. BIA Kelsey, as you may know, has lots of different tiers of service and the way we work with companies to kind of coach them and educate them on all the different market factors. A lot of the content we went over today is an example of that, but just, of course, one very small piece. So lots of different aspects to that. One I'll call out here is that we just came from LA last week, where we held our ILM West conference, which was a massive success. Our next conference is ILM East. It's going to be here before we know it. It's March 18th through 20th in Boston, Massachusetts. Please look out for information about that. We're going to have webinars just like this to kind of preview some of that content coming up in the next few months. And then any inquiries about any of the above, I would recommend contacting my colleague Steve Passwaiter, who's spasswaiter@biakelsey.com. You know, you'll also be receiving, sorry, we're getting some noise there. Looks like it's gone. You'll be receiving, as Patrick mentioned earlier, a great deal of information in follow-ups, emails, and other things that allow you to consume this content at your own leisure in terms of the webinar playback, the deck itself, and we encourage you to kind of pass that along to you know, friends and colleagues, and please reach out to us with any questions. So we'll end it there. I'd like to thank the speakers, both Chris Squared. Thanks also to everyone listening. We hope it was valuable for you. Here's actually some more contact information. You can reach out to me anytime, and the gentleman on the phone here. So again, we'd like to continue to engage you in dialogue about the opportunities in this quickly moving marketplace. And please reach out to us if there's anything we can do. Thanks again, and please enjoy the rest of your day.